Hello, and welcome to Achieve Success. Find the manual to your brain and optimize your workspace at the 2024 Writers Workout Conference. I created this presentation along with Dana Ridenauer for neurodivergent editors and authors, and think it will also benefit neurotypical people, especially the super busy ones. We will be sharing both the presentation slides and a document with resources, including links, so hopefully you can take just a few notes. The subtitle about finding the manual to your brain comes from me. I told my sons many times while they were growing up that we were trying to find the owner's manual to their brain so they could be their best selves, and that's what we want for you. Next slide. I'm Penni Askew, and I am the parent of two neurodivergent adults. I own Word Summit Editing, and I specialize in editing genre fiction. Dana Ridenauer is autistic and has ADHD, and they own Your Publishing BFF, and they edit mostly romance, cozy mysteries, and children's books. And they are presenting another presentation at this conference, so you will have their contact information in more than one place. So for this presentation, we have brought together our lived experiences and ideas from other neurodivergent people we've compared notes with over the years, and experts and professionals who work with neurodivergent people. And we hope that you find many of the ideas useful for yourself and your family. Next slide. The top 3 takeaways that we would like you to have from this presentation are that neurospicy brains are awesome and deserve to be honored and respected with methods that fit, not chafe. That focus flourishes in an environment that fosters growth. Breaking the rules is advised. Find what works for you and throw out the rest of it. We're to keep it short and sweet, routines, focus, and life hacks. Next slide. Okay. Our disclaimer is that we recognize our respective privileges and we understand the importance of not assuming everyone has similar privileges. We attempted to frame all of our suggestions with a social justice lens, but we acknowledge we may have failed and we ask your grace as we proceed. We want you to know that self-diagnosis is valid. We want you to take what you can from our presentation and throw out what will not work for you. And most importantly, we want you to know that you are worthy, no matter what you do or whether you work. Next slide. So I discovered Sam Dillon Finch several years ago when Twitter was still Twitter. You will see a couple slides from his ideas in this presentation, and links to his site are in the resources guide that we will provide. So Sam discusses productivity and talks about how society often defines productivity as completing as many tasks as possible. And he defines productivity, quote, as creating the circumstances and structures that allow you to be effective and balanced as you do the work. Reframing these words can be really helpful for folks with ADHD. Rather than creating structures that serve the work, i.e., I have to work quickly to please my boss, it's better to create structures that serve us, i.e., I want to feel effective and meet my personal goals. Paradoxically, when we set goals that serve us rather than the work, we're usually better at getting the work done anyway. Who would have thought? End of the quote from Sam Dillon Finch. Next slide. So we're going to start with routines, and we're going to keep in mind that when I talk about productivity, use your definition. Use your definition of productivity. Do not let society impose theirs on you. Again, this presentation is about finding what works for you. We're going to start with routines because almost all, if not all, of the experts I have worked with over the years with my sons have emphasized that routines help neurodivergent brains, and I think surely neurotypical brains too. Often, others have affected our routines in a way that was not helpful, or they have even enforced the routines on us, despite the fact that the routine did not work well or easily for us, or at all for us. We will say that routines are intentional, deliberate, and purposeful. And you might even use those three words as a mantra: intentional, deliberate, purposeful. Merriam-Webster defines routine as a regular course of procedure, habitual or mechanical performance of an established procedure. And so that's something to keep in mind as we go through the next few slides. Next slide. Okay. So this slide has a clip of The Truman Show. I could not get it to work for the presentation, but if you download the slides and you're going through this, you should be able to click and see. And you really only need to watch the first minute, because what it establishes, if you never saw the movie, Truman Burbank was adopted as an infant by a corporation, and his whole life has been a kind of reality show. Everyone else is a hired actor in his world, but he thinks it's all real. And he does not question his routine, his life, his choices, until near the beginning, a stage light falls out of his sky and lands on the street in front of his house. So even though he does not know it, his routine has been imposed on him by the people running the show. It's the questioning that we want you to take away from this presentation. What's working for you, what's not, what used to work for you and no longer works for you, and how and why should you change it. Next slide. So, like Truman, you have routines that you might not have chosen, or if you did, they might not work for you anymore. So when we give during this presentation, when we give ideas, we are asking you to think, is this part of my life and passion working for me now? If yes, why? Why does it work? And you want to know that so that you can tweak things in your life that aren't working. If not, how can I change it to make it work for me? Which of the ideas in this presentation will work for me, and which one or two should I try first? So, ignore what is not working for you, change what's not working for you in your own life, and throw out the old rules that never worked for you if you can. If you work for other people or take care of other people, your schedule and routine may not be truly your own, but you can still maybe think of ways to nurture yourself throughout the day. So let's get going. Start off with asking yourself when and how you are the most productive. So for example, do you need to ease into your work week, or are you thrilled when Monday morning arrives because your house is quiet and you can focus on your writing or your editing? What days and times make the most sense for you to do the things you need and want to do? Try to discern a pattern. Also think about, when are you the least productive? Think about the days of the week or the times of day when you typically need a break or a reset or a recharge, or just when the environment typically makes it harder than usual to do what you'd like to do. So for example, pre-pandemic, my husband had every other Friday off. So I knew if I stayed home on Fridays, I could not do deep thinking work like editing. So I had to choose: hang with my husband doing home maintenance or chores, or go someplace else that I could work on Fridays. Work on deep thinking things like editing. Chores and home maintenance are work and not as enjoyable as editing and writing. So ways to build habits or create a routine for writing or editing can include doing the same physical things every time you go to do that task. Experts have told me that your brain learns that certain tasks and locations are tied to the experience if it is consistent. So for example, getting your drink and maybe putting it in a particular glass or mug, turning on the light or the lamp, or turning them off because they are too bright for you, getting a bowl of hard candy, which is going to come up again later, or turning on the scent diffuser, than sitting at your desk if you can work at a desk, or sitting on your couch, or standing at your kitchen counter, wherever you consistently do your writing or editing. You might even have turning your computer on as part of the start of your day if you've made turning it off at the end of your day a signal to your brain and body that that work is over and you're doing different work until bed. So those are the kinds of things you can start training your brain about. A lot of us have sensory preferences, so you might want to adjust the lighting where you work if you can control it. Think about using string or fairy lights instead of overhead lights, or use lamps, or maybe get dimmer switches for your lamp or your lights. Think about what would help you. If you are in an environment with fluorescent lights and you are allowed to, you might see if you can put Velcro, so a soft cream colored cloth the exact size as the frame of the fluorescent fixture, and Velcro around the frame and on a piece of soft creamy colored cloth, and put that up, and that will minimize the flickering that might get on your nerves or trigger some tension in your body when you're under the fluorescent light fixture. One last hint is to gamify your decisions. So for example, you could make yourself a say no punch card for every time you say no to something that you always want to say no to, but often find yourself saying yes to. We have examples of other ways to gamify your day or routine later in the presentation, but do think about things you can gamify. Next slide. So we'll talk about shortcuts for speed, using apps or programs that help you work faster or minimize the number of decisions you need to make, minimize the interruptions in your day. Things like that can help you focus or get and stay in your zone. Some suggestions include turning off your notifications on both your phone and your computer. Let only select calls through. Have a browser, a folder of bookmarks that opens the ones you often use when writing or editing. So if you're consistently researching in the same places, you can have a little folder. So for example, in Chrome, I have a folder named Open Every Time Editing. And another advantage to that is I always know which tab the Ngram tab is at, so I can take the shortcut key to that tab. So macros. If you don't know, macros are mini programs that you can write in Word. A lot of us use macros written by Paul Beverley. He's a lovely gentleman in the UK, and there will be information on where you can find his macros in the handout. If the idea of using macros intimidates you, buddy up with someone to add just one or two. And some of Dana's and my favorites are listed here. And we'll have more details about what they do in the handout. I will say proper nounalize for authors, I highly recommend. What it does is make a list of all the words in your document that are probably proper nouns, and make a second list of words that you should probably pay attention to from the proper noun list. So you'll catch typos in your main character's name. So you'll see you typed it wrong once and correctly 33 times. You can subscribe to or purchase add-ins like Perfected or Editor's Toolkit, Pro Writing Aid, or Grammarly. All of these and some additional ones are in the handout. Consider taking a few minutes at the end of your writing or editing block or the day to plan your next day when you're going to sit down the next time, so that what is hanging over your head is fresh in your mind and it's written down before you get up or move away. This usually leads to less time the next day to get started or to figure out which project or where in each project you need to start. And for some of us, it takes a little stress out of our heads because we've done something that tells our brain we will be fine the next time we go to work on that task, that we will know where to pick it up. So, next page. Another way to help you achieve your current, and I do mean current in the moment, goal for your writing or editing is to work with others. A lot of people do sprints. Most people reach out to their writing or editing buddies and ask who wants to do sprints, and they agree on a start time, how long they'll do it. They usually tell each other what they hope to get done in that amount of time, which is usually only 25 to 50 minutes. And then they work toward that goal. And at the end of the sprint, they tell each other if they met the goal or not. And very often people will do a series of sprints together, and that's how they get their writing done for the day. So you can play around with that and find something that works for you. Another way to work with people is to do virtual co-working. So there are some programs out there that will help you set up a co-working session, and usually not free, but you can also set up your own group with friends, and you can co-work through Facebook, Google, Zoom, Discord. Most people turn on their cameras, mics, and chats to communicate at the start and agree on how long they'll work and whether or not, for example, they can interrupt each other with questions, help me solve this problem I just ran into, or if they'll hold all their questions to the end to say, hey, can you help me work this problem out? Depending on whether you're comfortable or not with your camera on or other cameras on, you'll all agree to that. But there is something about a lot of brains that seeing someone else quietly working helps your brain focus on you quietly working. So try to start with the cameras on to see if your brain can handle that. Focusmate.com on this list on the slide is a company that will help you find co-working mates, and I do believe there's a charge. If you share your physical workspace, things you can do to make it easier for you to focus is wearing headphones. And it's up to you if you wear them just to block the extra sounds or if you put your own sounds or music on that help you focus. You can also change which way your desk faces. And this again is if you're at home, but if you work for someone else, you might ask them if you can change where you sit in the office or which way your desk faces. This is advised especially if you have other people around who distract you. And then another idea is to wear a visor to block out visuals, and alternatively tape a piece of cardboard, like a light one, like from a cereal box, to your monitor so that it's sticking up and blocking your sight from distracting things. And you could write a fun, encouraging message on the board so that you can see it when you look up. Next slide. Okay. The prior slides alluded to helping you focus, but they also helped set routines and find ways that will help you work. The ideas in the following slides are meant to help you find more ideas for when the focus or concentration is more of a struggle than usual. Next slide. Be strategic. So we hope you're considering trying only one or two new things or changes to your current routine right now. The ideas we're discussing now are good at any time, but particularly if the project is a slog or boring. Once you have identified that this project or the stage of this project is a little more difficult to get into than other projects or other stages of this project, that is very often half the battle, recognizing that it's boring and that's the difficulty, or defining what the difficulty is. Be strategic about how you approach it in your next work session. So plan your breaks. Try Pomodoro apps or just a plain old timer. You will find some YouTube videos with lo-fi music and Pomodoro timing. If that helps you concentrate, that's great, and it's free. It will have ads if you don't have the paid YouTube version. You may be able to tune them out. If you are writing for a predetermined amount of time might work better for you right now than if you usually do a word count goal or a page count goal. If you are editing, look a little bit ahead and tell yourself you can probably get this next 1 or 2 or 5 pages done in 20 minutes and just do that. And then when you've hit the time that you said you were going to hit or the goal that you were going to hit of pages, and don't do too many, keep it short. Take your break. If you can, have a conversation with someone else, short, someone who will honor that you need just a short break. If you can, stand up, stretch, drink, take a little walk, maybe do yoga or chair dancing. And I do mean like short yoga, short chair dancing. Once or twice a day, as you are able, do some enjoyable movement. Try singing your negative thoughts aloud. You might find that it helps. Try doing the hard or yucky stuff to get it out of the way. Do that first. You could tell yourself that you only have to work on the current hard thing for 5 minutes. And you might find once that 5 minutes is up that you can keep going and finish the task. You might also find that you can only do 5 minutes at a time, but you could do several bursts of 5 minutes throughout your session. And then you might be able to finish it that day or sooner than having it hanging over your head and suddenly you're in the panic of the deadlines here. Some hints from the professionals I've worked on over the years include a kind of physical reset or grounding. The first is tapping emotional freedom technique, and it is literally tapping your own body. There will be links to some videos covering this in the handout. I will say I've been in the grocery store and got overwhelmed and tapped, and it helped. Another method is the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding, and you may be familiar with this. I've seen it on TV shows and in movies. You find 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 smell, and 1 that you can taste. And that helps reset your brain and body so that you can start up again. For especially boring tasks, which for me is checking citations, try sucking on hard candy or chewing on jerky. I personally use Jolly Ranchers because I grew up near the original factory and have an emotional attachment to them, and I like them. So I learned about this trick when my son's executive functioning coach had him try it one semester when he had an online Psych 101 class with lots of videos that he had a hard time paying attention to. Play around with whether it's the sucking on the hard candy or chewing on gum or chewing on jerky to see what works for you. The different textures or flavors may make a difference to you. I find that for a routine boring, not super boring, but just boring, any flavor of Jolly Ranchers works for me. But if it's more boring than usual, the sour apple and the cherry help me more than the other flavors. Learn that kind of thing about yourself and find what works for you. And then the trick will be to remember to pull that tool out of your toolbox. Next slide. So this is, I think, our second and final Sam Dillon Finch slide. So Sam has ran as a reminder for what they have for rewarding yourself, accountability, and novelty. And the ideas on this slide are what first made me take notice of him several years ago. He says to think about it like this: I ran toward the task. For many neurodivergent brains, we need more rewards throughout the task than a neurotypical brain does. The idea of a reward at the end is often not enough for us to initiate or continue the task. A longer list of ideas is in the resources handout, but to help get you started, consider having a special beverage or snack, one that you don't have every day, and enjoy it while you work. Another idea is to give yourself the reward at the start as well as the end. Maybe singing along to your favorite song, or looking at your favorite piece of art, or letting yourself write in your favorite notebook for 3 minutes before you start and at strategic points during and the end will help you. So what we're asking you to do is to think about easy rewards, things that make you happy but that you don't do often, and try one. Accountability. Sam calls this extrinsic motivation, or motivation outside ourselves. Many neurodivergent brains do better if you have outside motivation. We've discussed most of these in depth earlier. Body doubling, which is actually when you're physically with someone. And sometimes my son, who's still in college, will ask me to body double with him when he needs to get a project done. And I just sit next to him at our big dining room table and do my own thing while he works on his project. That's body doubling. It's a lot like co-working, only in person. Accountability partners. I have a couple accountability partners, different ones on different days of the week as they need accountability and I need accountability. Sprints. So those kinds of things for your extrinsic motivation. The N in REN is for novelty, which helps with the dopamine boosts. Turn your tasks into a game. Maybe number your tasks and then roll some dice to decide which one you start with. So if you roll a number 4, you do task number 4. Play beat the clock and do the task in front of you before your timer goes off. but still do it right. That's what I always say to my sons. Do that as fast as you can while still doing it right. Change position as you are able. So if you're lucky enough to be able to have one of those desks that lowers and raises so you can sit and stand, if you can stand, do that. Maybe just change rooms, but think about making sure you change to a room where you can still meet your goals. Change the font you are working in. Your brain will see it as something new and novel. Play upbeat music. Write a chapter in a different point of view, especially if you're having trouble figuring out what to do next or what your character is really feeling. Write it from the point of view of their best friend, because their best friend's going to give you some clues, and you've got it in you. Somewhere in your brain, the best friend is holding back on you, and so is your main character. Think about other ways to gamify or make your work fun, and that can help you get what you need, the dopamine boosts to keep going. Next slide. So you might find some technology can help you. All of these are included in the handout, most with links. Some of these are free or have free versions, so you can try them out first, and others do have a cost, either a one-time purchase or a subscription. So I'm just going to let this slide sit for a minute before we move on so you can look at it. But again, more details on these are all in the handout. Okay, next slide. Life hacks. Most of the professionals I've worked with over the years have said that in addition to routines really helping our neurodivergent brains, making fewer decisions helps. We get decision fatigue, and I assume everyone does, but we get it faster. So our next section is on life hacks, things that can help you maintain your energy and focus. Next slide. Feed yourself first, and we do mean your body. For many of us, the decision of what to eat or when to eat takes away some of our energy or the ability to decide other things. And I know we'd all rather decide if our main character should be doing something than if we have something decent for lunch. You can have pantry meals at the ready, which for me includes not only the pantry ingredients, but also freezer ingredients. And you can put some ingredients in a Ziploc in the freezer and compress it tighter so you can fit more in. And that's a really good hint if the only freezer you have is the small one on your refrigerator. These pantry meals can be hearty, easy, and fast to put together. And that's really important if you've hit indecision, you can't make any more decisions. It's nice just you see these two things, you know you can combine them and eat and not even have to cook them sometimes. You can also plan leftovers or double recipes that freeze well, so you can just pull them out and put them in the microwave. To help with that, consider using a meal planning app. We have at least 2 in the resources handout, and once you've learned to use your meal planning app, you should find that using it takes some mental work away from the planning. You don't need to think so hard on planning your meals, and you can focus on your writing or other things. Think about adding grocery delivery to your life. Even if there's a delivery fee, it may be less expensive than the impulse buys you do at the grocery store or the cost of going there when thinking about your time and your gas money and the mental work of changing tasks to go there and come back. Not to mention if you get sensory overload in the store with the lights and the overhead music they almost always play and the other people. Again, you may find that it's worth the cost of the delivery fee or that your budget does not change because you're getting more paid work done or you're not doing impulse buys. Prep your snacks ahead of time. Some examples are to slice apples or wash grapes and put them in small containers that you can grab from the refrigerator. If you have the space and budget, consider putting a small fridge in your workspace. And you might use the small fridge as your bookshelf for your resource books. If prepping and cooking are physically too demanding, decide if creating a cutting station at your kitchen table or adding a rolling stool to your kitchen will help you, or anything else that you can think of that makes it easier for you or makes you capable to do it. Have shelf-stable and easy-to-open snacks that you can leave at your workspace. Examples might be protein bars, nuts, cheese, canned beans with a pop top, but don't forget the spoon, granola bars, dried fruit, Dove chocolates. Pop-Tarts, sesame sticks. Think about what you like that's easy to leave at your workstation. And the last idea is to invest in a large insulated water bottle. Make sure you stay hydrated, and a side effect will be that getting up to use the facilities will give you some movement. Next slide. Structure your space. Structure your space so it works for you. A space allows start your day with what you need in your workspace. If you need to get a box to hold everything, to move from the corner of the living room to the couch to somebody's bedroom, do so. But remember that if you're neurodivergent, once you put your books or pens or whatever in that box, your brain stops really seeing them or remembering that they are there. So you might get a crate that's not solid that you can see through, it's got the physical spaces, but that's sturdy enough that when you get to your workstation or change where you're working, you can take what's in the box out and set it on top, and then you can put it back when you're done. Manage the temperature in your area. If you can't ever quite get the heat or cold the way you want it, have sweaters or fans handy, and keep tweaking it till it's the way you can get it and it's optimal for you. Keep your reference materials within reach. Subscribe to online versions if necessary or if you can. Think about any rearranging you should do to make your space your own and to make it work for you. Next slide. Get dressed. So this is really kind of addressing decision fatigue. So the fewer decisions you make in a day, the more you can keep making later in the day. So if you don't have to think about what you're going to put on, that helps. So think about what you can automate. Think about making a uniform. What's comfortable for you? So I went to a quote unquote uniform many years ago, and it's a t-shirt, long sleeve t-shirt in the winter, short sleeve in the summer, jeans in the winter, skirts in the summer. I don't have to think about it. Dana prefers pop-over caftans, sundresses, housecoats. Think about, and I'm not joking because I have friends who actually do this, have sleeping pajamas and working pajamas, and change into your working pajamas when you get up and you're going to work for the day. Find what works for you and for your life. Think about color-coded hangers. This might apply more to younger kids or to those of you with younger kids. We started this when our kids were in preschool. So we could say, go get something off a blue hanger, and the blue hangers met the school dress code. So they could choose what they were wearing, and they would choose from the appropriate hanger. So there were no arguments of, you can't wear that to school, they'll send you home. So if you have clothes that are worn by category, think about color coding your hangers so you know. For school, for outside work, for conferences, for date night, that kind of thing. Organize your drawers so you can see what's available. I started folding my t-shirts so I can see which print is on it, and instead of stacking them on top of each other, they stand side by side in the drawer. I figured out how to do this watching a Marie Kondo video. I've never Marie Kondoed my house, but when I saw how she folds things and puts them in the drawer, I thought, why have I never done it that way? Put away or give away clothing you don't like and won't wear. Now, if you do need to keep it, I have a funeral dress and a wedding dress, and they are dresses because I have extended family that would not let me into their place of worship without a dress. You can put those in a cedar or in a box with a cedar cube and pull it out when you need it. But if you know you will never, ever, ever wear it, give it away or put it in a garage sale. And the last hint here is to permit yourself to wash smaller loads. A lot of us were taught to only wash when you have a full load, but for many of us, our brains just do better if we have smaller loads or we have a routine. So we know that we do this load on Tuesday and we do that load on Thursday. And if it's not full, we can still do it. And a side effect of that is that if it's a smaller load, it's faster to put away. Now, you might want to own enough clothes to only do laundry one day a month. If that's you, own it. That's not me. But this presentation is all about finding what works for you, and I would defend you to anyone who tried to change it. Next slide. Okay, break the rules. Society or our families sometimes tell us that we are valuable if we are up and at 'em early. My mom is from a ranch. My mother-in-law grew up on a farm. They were all about getting up early. But remember, the early bird gets the worm, but it's the second mouse who gets the cheese. And something horrible did not happen to the second mouse, right? Okay, so this slide is to help you start to think about rules imposed on you that do not work for you. Change when you do activities so they suit you. If you need to, pretend that you are in a different time zone. If necessary for you, work evenings or nights or weekends. There was a time I worked for a gentleman who was a night owl, and I thought it would be good if I lived in Korea because then we'd be up at the same time and I wouldn't have these emails or texts that came into me at 2 in the morning. Be okay with running a partially full dishwasher. This is kind of like the clothes washer. This one came from me needing to convince my husband that for me, for my days to start right and to go right, I could not have the dishwasher running during the day. So if we could not get through the next day's dinner without running it, it had to run. And I could just get up before everyone else, have my quiet cup of coffee, and unload the dishwasher. And that's what worked for me. Think about what works for you. If you can afford it, hire the jobs that you don't like to do. And you don't have to hire, like, so let's say house cleaning. You might not be able to afford someone to clean your whole house, but maybe you can afford for them to clean the wet stuff, the mopping of the kitchen and the cleaning of the bathrooms. Or lawn work. Maybe you love trimming your bushes, but you hate mowing the lawn, or vice versa. You can probably find someone who will do just part of the job. And so, ignoring my specific examples, think about what you really do not like to do or what is super hard for you to do, and think about if you could hire someone to do just that one task. And you might find that your paid productivity goes up enough to cover the additional costs. So again, do what works for you. Next slide. Okay, resources. So this is a sheet of links to Sam Dillon Finch. The handout has this and more. The slide is here really to remind me, to remind you that you won't necessarily like all the resources we have on our handout, or you might not find them useful for you. Even within my own home, I have one professional on the handout whose YouTube videos I love. My husband sometimes, if I tell him he should watch one, he will, but he doesn't particularly love that YouTube channel. And my son, who I'm watching them for, does not like the dude. So you need to find what works for you and not overwhelm yourself also. Find the one or two that is good for you and speaks to you. And that's all. That's just the reminder when you get the handout. To start with one or two, don't overwhelm yourself, and don't be afraid to say, this doesn't work for me. Next slide. So Dana and I are offering a conference special. We, by coincidence, both offer copy edits of 10,000 words for $250. It's a service aimed at people who have never been copy edited and are nervous about it, or who are on a really tight budget and can't afford the full copy edit, but who could take our edits and follow the examples and patterns. And for the 10,000 word edit, we do more commenting to explain some changes we might not explain into a more experienced author about, if we're following a rule generally in a copy edit, we don't explain it, but we might explain it to you, especially if it looks like you haven't mastered it yet. For the conference goers, we are offering 10% off if when you contact us, you let us know and contact us before July 31st, 2024. Next slide. So stay in touch. This concludes the presentation. If you have questions for us, please do reach out. If you have information you think we should add to the presentation or the handout, do let us know. We hope you can find some changes to your writing or editing that make your life easier, and we hope to hear from you. Thank you.